The Timeshift.
Hello and welcome, I'm Chris Hall and this is The Timeshift, my sci-fi film fest. It is great to have you with me as always. This week looking at the latest episode of Doctor Who entitled The Zygon Inversion. And because this little video is something of a critiquey, reviewy kind of thing, this video is going to be spoiler heavy. So if you don't want this episode spoiled for you for whatever reason, it's best to switch the video off now. Okay, everybody ready? Everybody geared up? Let us dive headfirst into the Zygon Inversion. Oh, how mysterious. Okay, so when this week's episode started, something felt very off to me. I don't know if it did to you, but it certainly did to me. I mean, there I was, watching the episode. We just had the last time on Doctor Who bit, and then we had the opening bit and it was Clara in bed. We didn't quite know whether this was a flashback or some kind of bit in the future or a dream sequence or what, and then it was slowly revealed to us that it was actually Clara, but she's trapped effectively in her own psyche as she has this weird link to herself and the evil Zygon version of herself, and that whole exploration of that was really, really interesting, and it started to feel as if I was watching some legitimate piece of sci-fi, not the science fantasy that apparently Doctor Who is now. And the whole sequence itself felt very well thought out, as though it was thought through ahead of time, that this wasn't just cobbled together because it looked cool or anything like that. It felt as if there was actually a means and a motive behind, as though ideas within this bit may well be explored within the full episode itself. It felt very, very weird because this week's episode is written by Peter Harness, who's a fucking monkey. I mean, how could a guy like this write this opening bit, this whole brilliantly well thought out, well paced little sequence? I mean, it's impossible. I mean, we can't have gone from last week's tomfoolery to this. I mean, it's impossible. I simply refuse to believe it. I mean, has this guy suddenly realised that he can write? Has he been hiding his talent for all this time? I mean, is there two Peter Harnesses, an evil Zygon version that's been writing the episodes up to this point, and now the real one's come back to restore his reputation? I mean, this is really weird. This is really strange. And then, like a bolt from the blue, came the opening title sequence, and it said episode written by Peter Harness and Stephen Moffat. And then came the stark realisation that Peter Harness is still a monkey, and it was Stephen Moffat who had saved the day. Yay! Thank you, Stephen Moffat. I never thought I'd ever say those words, but thank you, you mad crazy genius. Somehow, somewhere, you have managed to turn this episode into something vaguely watchable. I mean, my God, I'm willing to give you the benefit of the doubt at least once for the remainder of this series. I'm willing to forgive the whole two-parted thing right here, right now. I mean, my God, somehow you've managed to turn this episode, this whole stupid storyline, into something passable, something average. My God, what a weird world we are in, where we are celebrating averageness. My God. This week's episode is everything that last week's really should have been. I mean, this week's isn't perfect by any stretch or means of the imagination, but it at least functions significantly better by the inclusion of just one single solitary thing, which is the good Zygon. I mean, if you saw my review last week, you'll know just how vital the good Zygon would have been to make last week's episode at least function that little bit better. Maybe not save the episode, but at least help its legitimacy in what it's trying to do. This week's and last week's episode, least we forget, as though we bloody could forget, is supposed to explore ISIS and the refugee crisis on all these big complex areas. These issues, once again, are multiple areas of grey, not black and white. But last week's episode painting them as being black and white issues by the sheer lack of a good Zygon to actually add any ambiguity to proceedings. I mean, you can't, with any sense of legitimacy, compare evil space aliens to the horrors that are going on in the world around us with a straight face and not come across as a colossal tit. Of course, once again, this episode wasn't perfect by any stretch or means of the imagination. There were still issues with it. We still got the political rhetoric-y bits here, but at least this week they're treated with a little bit more nuance. Still not fantastic, but a little bit more subtle than last week. Well, to be honest, anything could be more subtle than last week. An elephant in tap shoes would be more subtle and demure than what we had last week, for Christ's sake. Of course, we still had a bloody clanger of a line when the Doctor says something along the lines of, "Oh, why does peace always have to involve killing?" I mean, good grief, given how the millions of creatures that he's had to kill over his exploration, over his adventures around the universe, I mean, is that really discussion? Is that a can of worms we want to be opening right now? It kind of seems ever so slightly hypocritical, but whatever. It's an arty-farty moment. I understand why it's there within the context of the plot, but whatevs. Of course, we have that little bit with the camera phone where Jesus Christ, when you get the news report that says aliens spotted in London. I mean, seriously, Jesus Christ, where have these people been for the past 10 years? Every week there seems to be an alien invasion in London. This isn't news anymore. Or is it true what we had in that stupid episode when they're walking around the forest where humanity's greatest superpower is its ability to forget? Or something. I mean, good grief. The biggest issue that I have with this week's episode is the thing that gave us our best moment within this episode, which is the whole showdown in the bunker. I can't think of any other words to describe it, but that bit which pretty much killed the episode stone dead. I mean, dearie me. This feels like massive hangovers from Kill the Moon. It really does, with this big, complex moral issue. Oh my god, it's so difficult. Whichever button I press, everybody's going to die. Although knowing Peter Harness, regardless which button I press, dick all will happen. I mean, good God, seriously, Jesus Christ. Is every episode that Peter Harness is going to write going to end with a decision like this? With the kill everything or kill something button? I mean, God almighty. Of course, the whole situation was made all the more bloody mind-numbing when Kate Stewart suddenly decides to chirp up and press the other buttons because, fuck, we needed this scene to be more tense, didn't we? Here's my suggestion how that whole scene could have been altered to make it ever so slightly better. Have one box, just one box, with still truth or consequences. I don't understand why truth or consequences is printed inside the box. I mean, how would the Doctor know that phrase? I mean, this box he made shortly after the Zygon Invasion, so how would he know that word, that phrase, if that phrase hadn't been said yet, unless this is some way hardwired into the Zygon's consciousness anyway, or is something other mysterious happening or something else? I don't know. Maybe it's just arty-farty bollocks. I don't honestly know. Anyway, the way to make this scene a lot more dramatic, in my opinion, have one box, have evil Zygon Bonnie in front of that box, then have Kate Stewart pointing a gun at evil Zygon Bonnie. You don't need the second box. The second box is totally redundant, as what buttons may have been in that box? Well, even a button that seemingly did dick all, or a button that blew up a nuke under London. Yeah, because the Doctor would really have had that as an option. I mean, I find it very difficult to believe the Doctor would actually create a device which could kill anything. I mean, no, wait, the four options were kill everybody in London, kill all the Zygons, restart the war between the humans and the Zygons, or stop the Zygons transforming, or something. I mean, those were the four options. I mean, my God, why didn't you just go the whole hog and have another box with cake or die written inside it? I mean, good grief. I mean, look, that moment, that whole setup was just a vehicle so that we have Peter Capaldi delivering a fantastic monologue. That's the whole reason why that was there. Nothing else, but dearie me, I mean, any pacing, any zest to the episode just kind of got drained out of this episode as soon as we got into that moment, because we were back into Kill the Moon territory. But at least no one pressed any buttons. At least the cake or die option wasn't pressed or anything like that. At least we didn't have one of these big, laboured, complex decision buttons being pressed and then dick all happening. I mean, that would have been the alternative if Peter Harness being just left in mad creative control in this episode, I'm almost guaranteedly sure, but whatever. This episode was just, at the end of the day, for Peter Capaldi to make a big speech. A big, brilliant speech that he did fantastically and well, which I will probably talk about within the big performance bit, which is right now! Okay, so Stephen Moffat saves the day in terms of writing, Peter Capaldi saves the day in terms of performance. He was by far and away, performatively speaking, the only decent thing about this episode. I mean, Yes, the final sequence was just an excuse for him to deliver a speech, but by God, he delivered it fantastically. It's the kind of performance that makes it feel as though he's played the Doctor since day one. A connection, a resonance with that character, with that whole creature. I mean, that is just such a brilliant moment. But it's just a shame that it's in service of what ultimately is a fairly blimp crap episode, an episode which only exists just so that we can draw a line under this two-parter once and for all. But still fantastic, brilliant. He's the only worthwhile performance in this week's episode. Jenny Coleman as Clara / Bonnie was... I don't know whether I'm just now at a state of total indifference towards Jenny Coleman and Clara and co, or what. I mean, last week I was fine with her. Last week she did everything that she needed to do. This week there seems to be something that aggravated me about her ever so slightly, and I don't understand it. Maybe the cracks are starting to show. Maybe the whole honeymoon period that I had with her from last series is starting to go, because before last series I hated Clara with every fibre of my being. Last series she became an interesting character for me. Towards the end of it, she started to feel redundant and pointless, and now she's starting to feel that way again. But we'll soon see next week if that's still the case. Kate Stewart was there, and Osgood. Oh, frigging hell! Jesus, Mary, Mother of Joseph. I mean, here's the issue. I have issues with Osgood. I'm not going to go into them here and now. I've already kind of touched upon them last week, but I don't like Osgood. I've never liked her as a character. I hate quirky people and I hate hipsters and cheese, both of them. And now her death in Heaven is now just totally redundant. Any kind of dramatic impact that a whole death had last series now totally run out, because there is now 2 Osgoods again, because... fuck me, that's why. Who honestly cares now? Because, fuck. We can't have anybody dying in Doctor Who. You know what? I feel the whole reason Osgood is back in Doctor Who is because probably the sheer amount of fanboy and fangirl tears that were shed when Osgood died last series. That's the only reason why they brought her back. I can almost positively guarantee it. Okay, I can't. And I can't guarantee the other thing that I said I could guarantee, but still... whatever. She's now going to spend the rest of her life hovering over what looks like a crap Christmas present. Because, yeah, fine. Oh, and by the way, what's the bloody point of wiping everybody's memory at the end of the episode? What purpose, what good does that actually serve anybody? I mean, Jesus Christ. I couldn't understand it last time the Zygons were there to wipe their memory, so it would actually engage the truce, but now... why? Why? What benefit does that have to anybody? Because now, if the Zygons ever want to rebel again, as far as they're concerned, the whole truth or consequences evil box is still a thing, and is still a legitimate thing they can use. So that just means more trouble further down the line, and Kate Stewart has had her mind erased, so... she'll still think that nuking or zapping or electrifying all the Zygons is still an option, even though there is no such option in the boxes, so it's just creating more problems for later on. God almighty, what's the bloody point? And this whole ending sequence, this whole ending conversation was about forgiveness, about just saying no, putting down your arms and talking peace. But you've just wiped half the room's memory of the people who could have preached peace, who could have gone forward and said, there's no need to fight at all, we can put down our arms and all live in tents and live on a goat farm and eat croissants or something. What's the bloody point in it? I mean, my God, any moral message, any truth, any change in character that could have been gained for Kate Stewart or anybody else in that room, gone, wiped away. Because, I mean, what happens if evil Zara, Bonnie, girl, now Osgood number 3 dies? That means that the evil Zygons will just get a new ruler and then issues will just start again. Because no one else knows that the Osgood boxes are filled with nothing but disappointment. Or something. God almighty, this episode at the end of the day was pretty stupid. Saved by Stephen Moffat, but this is all stuff that I can talk about in the overview. Okay, so overview. This episode was, once again, saved by Stephen Moffat and Peter Capaldi. Without either of these two, this episode would have just been a write-off here and now. And probably the rest of the series. Not that last week's annoyed me or aggravated me at all, this was just plain pathetic. This week it could have gone even worse, but thankfully it didn't. Of course, there are many issues that when we look at the finer details of this episode don't quite work or don't quite stack up. Things that do perturb me somewhat. But at the end of the day, it is just vaguely saving the day when we think about it. Last week's episode was crap. This week's episode is average. It's not good by any stretch of means in the imagination, but it at least made this whole mess at least some way watchable. It's weird now with the whole two-parter thing. I still think the whole two-parter thing is a good idea, because when it works, it really bloody works. The opening two-parter to this series was fantastic. The second one, the third one, oh dear, and this fourth one, oh good God. I still think there's legs to go. I think there's still distance in this whole thing. It just so happens that it's been bollocked up by crap writers. That is the frankness of it. I mean, God almighty, this is all going back to the whole, do we really need guest writers? Are guest writers a good thing question, really? Which, of course, is a discussion for another day, I suppose. But what about you? What did you think? Did you enjoy this week's episode? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Let me know in the comment section, whichever website, web zone you're watching this on, and let me know, and maybe you'll be read out towards the end of next week's show, or whatever is most convenient. Maybe I'll just reply directly to you. But in whatever case, I'll see you next week for more Doctor Who fun, where we have weird shaky cam stuff. Because I haven't seen enough of that in the cinema recently, have I? Whatever. Goodbye, everybody. Bye-bye.